Hello, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to have you in the audience. I would imagine. I'm sure that that's great. I'm glad for you to be listening. This is the me digest. This is the identity digest in which you digest what it means for there to be an identity either for you or for your loved ones. Um, thanks for Thanks for sharing yourself with other people this Christmas if that's what you did, and if you stayed home because of COVID. Thanks for saving the planet then. I guess you're a better person if you did that because then you protected us all and kept all of us safe more so, if that's what you believe. I mean, especially if that's what you believe. If you believe that you kept us safe for the guidelines that you followed to protect yourself and everybody else, then you are more a do-gooder than the people that are out there just spreading it because they think that the disease is a hoax. So, I mean, according to you, then, if you're a person that didn't visit your family this Christmas, you're like, oh, all those people acting like it's a hoax are evil. So to you, you're more, everybody is a do-gooder is what I'm saying. Everybody was right this Christmas, just like everybody thinks that they're right, and then they followed through with what they think, just like it always is. People like to follow through with what they think is right, and just like it says in the song "The Sound of No, The Boxer" by Simon and Garfunkel, the man hears what he wants to hear and disregards the rest. Where the man is figurative or representative, or figurative or representative, or figurative of any man, I guess is what I would read into that. Um, so let's get right into it. Let's talk about aliens. Have you guys let aliens into your lives this Christmas season? Are aliens a part of the whole shebang for you? Is that a part of the experience? Do you who by show of hands talks to aliens on a regular basis? And put your hands down. Yes, I see those hands. Yes, thank you. I see those hands. Thank you for showing me that. What part and what role do aliens play in your life? What character are they in your story? Are they non-character? Are they zero? Are they outside of the realm of what you think is possible for yourself individually and for the world? Because you contribute more to your individual story, I would say. You can do a lot. You have a lot more influence over your story individually, and who knows what effect then that eventually has on anybody else. And it's more of a ripple effect if you already have more influence, or if you take the time to acquire a position that automatically gives you more influence, such as a political one, because there's political positions that are afforded to the people that deem themselves to be worthy of having lots of influence, and so you go in the direction of influential positions if you narrate yourself to be more famous or outstanding, and or more peculiar enough to acquire a position that's more outstanding and more above other people. Because there's people that are meant to be above other people. Maybe you're one of them. Maybe you narrate your story to be more influential, but there are, like, the story of the entire world, and especially of Americans, I feel, is bordering on the story of aliens more so in the last few years. Like, the world is more eagerly anticipating the idea of aliens, and so is more narrating aliens into its own story. But that's what I'd say is the case when you see that there's more alien insignia everywhere, alien paraphernalia everywhere, like alien shirts and shit like that you can buy, and people wearing them. It's like people are more strongly associating themselves with aliens, especially in the last couple of years. It's more pop culture. Aliens is just more pop culture, especially as shift from Hollywood film production type of things. Pop culture, a motif of it more recently is aliens and connecting with them, and psychedelic drugs, and your use of psychedelic drugs to talk to aliens, and just the stereotypes of taking LSD and talking to aliens are becoming more mainstream, and the idea of that is more prolific than it used to be, so that people are kind of people are just kind of attributing transcendence to aliens more so, but the kind of transcendence you might experience from a psychedelic drug, which would put you in a different world, different state of things than the world that you're living in, so that under the influence of shrooms or LSD, you would experience a world that is structured off of completely different concepts than the concepts of the world that you're in, to the point that you might experience transcendence at a higher level, or have a window open more so to the transcendence, so that you're flooded with it more, and and ideas through transcendent means might come upon you more when under the influence of a psychedelic drug. But it's to the point that people would describe it as talking to aliens. But it's kind of like 2020 religions are more bordering on like connecting with the universe, or deeming transcendence to be something more practical, such as, well, possibly there's aliens and it's not even irrational to think so, is a set of beliefs that people are more and more willing to accept, seeing as that our place in the universe is very finite in comparison to the rest of the universe. In fact, as long as you're willing to recognize it, we're actually very closed-minded to the rest of the universe. If you recognize the rest of the universe to be one giant imagination, we occupy a single position or a single word or definition within it. We're just one word, one identity, one group, one culture, ultimately within the context of potential infinite cultures, if you consider the potential that exists within a universe, and that it is basically infinite, the same way that an imagination has the potential to create or imagine infinite things. Then, I mean, if you're in the business of trying to grasp the infiniteness of the universe, you might go in the direction of understanding that we're just one of infinite possible worlds, or that we're just very small. But that maybe it's the case that America hasn't found out a lot, and we're kind of primitive to this point, and our imagination is rather limited. And when you consider that we've only made it to the outer recesses of our own gravity ball, and barely past that into the moon, like we don't even know much about our own solar system. And so if you understand how small the Earth is in comparison to the universe, you understand the potential for there being aliens or that. But the way that I like to think about it is that, well, I believe in aliens. I think that I wouldn't really understand somebody who would be up in arms about someone who believed in aliens, because I'd say it's more rational to think that there are aliens. And also, like, if you don't believe that there are aliens, there's nothing you could do to prove that, obviously. But like, probabilistically, I'd say that there's a greater probability that there's aliens in all rationality, seeing as that we know it's such a tiny portion of the universe, and it would be self-aggrandizing and narcissistic to think that we're the only life and only planet that has life in the entire universe. It's similar to when we were more primitively thought that the universe orbited around the Earth, but we came to realize that the Earth was just a piece of the universe that orbits around everything else. It's just kind of the Earth is an afterthought, is what you would have to consider in your approach to aliens. So I think that it's rational to think that there's aliens, considering that there's probably other planets that have life. And also, I would say that there's other aliens that have, there's all kinds of different cultures that we're not even considering, that are like aliens are life forms that evolved from something other than monkeys. Like, either like you could have a planet full of lizards, or a planet full of cockroach beings. Like, if cockroaches came to be the dominant species, evolved out of that to become the dominant species on their planet, then you could have cockroach people. But there's like different, I think that's a possibility. At least it's something you should consider. And there's that potential for every single animal that you see is really just a potential world where that animal came to be the dominant species. It's kind of like it gives you a picture of that. But other worlds would have animals on them that weren't even anything like the animals that are on our planet. So I guess the way that I see it is that they're like, when you really consider infinite possible other worlds, which there are, with consideration of the expanse of the entire universe, you can kind of look at it as though the animals that you see are representative of those different worlds in lieu of us knowing what is actually on a different world. But every different world would provide for you a different culture, and like your galaxy is composed of, like, if our galaxy is big enough that it has other planets with intelligent life, it's big enough that it's like a local neighborhood that could at some point develop its own culture once the cultures within the galaxy became more united, sort of like the way it is in Star Wars. If the technology develops enough that we're just all traveling through space very easily, then different cultures, different aliens will connect with each other. But I guess that's what's so transcendent about Star Wars, is like, it's like it's probably what all the geeks and nerds were already thinking at the point that they're understanding of, like, the infinite capacity of the universe. There's probably all kinds of different life forms. It's probably something all the geeks were already thinking was possible. They're like, oh, Star Wars, you said exactly it. And also Star Wars approaches it like as if it's an understood thing. Now it's like the setting for it is a galaxy far, far away in a time before the Earth existed, like many years ago, I think is what the setting is. But it's kind of like if it was, as long as you're considering this alternate universe where there's all these different alien life forms, it could take place at any time, because it would take us light years into the future to arrive at a place where we have something like that going on, that the Earth is a part of it. But I mean, the alternate universe aspect of it is well established by the setting of the movie, that tells you it takes place in the outer space in the universe somewhere, but just like the Earth isn't a part of it, because it'd be difficult to, I mean, maybe that's just easier to introduce the concept to people, rather than that people have to envision that the Earth would progress technologically enough to be a part of a universe in the future where there's a bunch of alien life forms, and the Earth has its own spaceships that do what other alien spaceships do. Like, the Earth is way intelligent, because if you introduce the Earth into it rather than make it an entirely alternative universe, that kind of makes it more political, to the point like people will have arguments like, oh no, humans are never going to advance enough to do that. Humans are too evil to advance. Like, it might make it too political, or like people's emotions will get involved too much. And so maybe that's part of why Star Wars had such universal appeal, is because it's the most universal that it could be, seeing as that it kind of harnesses the potential of the entire universe, but without limitations given to it by the Earth. Because if we're trying to narrate Earth into that, it kind of limits it automatically, because everything that takes place on Earth is limited by the Earth's terms, explanations, motifs, and cultures and language. Everything that takes place on the Earth is already limited by the Earth. So it's like it might be hard at this point to envision that the Earth has the potential to be as alien as we consider aliens to be. But aliens are so you get Star Wars, and it takes place in a completely alternative universe, and that's probably the reason why it had mass appeal, like why it was relative to so many people could like it, is because you didn't have to let your emotions and political views get in the way. You could just enjoy imaginatively what it would be like for the universe to be connected across many different alien cultures. And in the hearts of geeks and nerds, that's what they already believe. That's what they already think is taking place. So it speaks right to them, but speaks right to lots of people, especially if that is true, or like that's what comes about in the future. But it appeals to people where people are going to think that they're part of something bigger, and that really the furthest extent of that is understanding that you're a part of something bigger, to the point that you're part of a planet that's part of something bigger, that's going to be part of something bigger, further and further, the larger sections of the entire universe that you're considering. Because the Earth, if we had the technology to go to other planets, we would encounter other alien life forms just in our galaxy, but that would be our neighborhood. But then the neighborhood would exist in a larger city, the larger city is the super galaxy, and It's just like whatever. The better your technology is, the better your ability to traverse time and space. But we don't know enough about that. We don't even talk about the speed of. We don't even allow ourselves to expand on what the speed of light means and understand deeper how it's connected to time and space, because we use the same diagrams about a planet, that a planet orbits around another planet, that it's like rolling on a fabric the same way a penny rolls around one of those things in a museum. We've used that same diagram for 50 years, but like the diagrams we use are the same ones that we've been using for 50 years, which totally defeats the purpose of trying to be scientific or evolve your body of knowledge in any direction. It's the antithesis of evolving a body of knowledge to use the same diagrams, because the point is that you use that diagram to expand on it and then create a new diagram, so you can issue the old diagram into oblivion and forget about it, because you're supposed to use it to make variations off of it, to make your own creative inferences, so that we can evolve faster and faster and be a more knowledgeable people overall, because there's many different people with many different interpretations, and to filter all of them through one diagram of a planet, how it orbits around another planet, is like a penny orbiting around the center of one of those penny things that you drop on it in the museum. Like, to filter everybody's interpretation through these singular diagrams, or just the double slit experiment for quantum physics. Like, we don't expand on that we don't allow anybody to creatively say it's anything, because the scientific community and mathematic communities have so much power, have enough power that even regular people that would consider themselves scientific will police anybody with alternative opinions online, so that they follow the guidelines of the scientific community. But that's just primitive. That's amateur. We will grow out of that as we realize that it's better to be open-minded rather than make everybody be closed-minded and filter their minds through finite means and finite devices, such as singular diagrams that were useful to a handful of scientists at one point a long time ago, and it was only as a result of their influence on the imagination of science as a whole that the diagrams exist to this day. But it's not like we have to continue to live in our ancestors' imaginations, and it's more mature and grown up for us to discard those ideologies that we have found to be not the most conducive, or like not the most unlimited for us, so that if you want to create better ideologies, if you want to have better ideas and evolve in any direction, you're going to see through the limitations of your current ideologies, so as to improve on them. What I'm saying is that facts are only over a time period, the same way that realities are, the same way that civilizations exist over a time period, the same way that Persia existed over a time period, and then it had a beginning and then it had an end. But the area over which, like the borders of the Empire of Persia, was a specific location. So it had a specific location and a specific time, to the point that you'd say that Persia as an entity was an event that had a specific timeline. It was an event within the context, from the eyes of the universe. It was just a point in time, so like a blip, finite dot, the same way that you have a blip of a life in comparison with eternity or all of time. It's the same thing as the timeline of a civilization, but the civilization in the time period it exists, and in the location that it exists, like the space that its borders are over, what it has authority over geographically, that's just a reality that is temporary, and it is a reality only as long as they're able to maintain the borders. But at the point that the borders dissolve, such as they involve themselves in too much moral corruptness that they lose sight of their identity or their purpose for maintaining the reality, or if somebody comes in and invades them and takes them over, so that their borders are changed, or their name is changed so they're not Persia anymore, or like both of those happen, so that you're like half of Persia gets taken over and then the other half then gets named something else. Like, that's the point at which like the Persia as an entity or as a time or as an event changes to the extent that it didn't survive any longer. But I'm just saying the dissolving of the borders, or like somebody takes over the area that it's over, that's the end of that reality as it stood as a reality, and they're only able to maintain the reality for a certain period of time. So it's like it's temporary, the amount of time that they're able to implement and institute their their authority and their reality in themselves as a real thing or as an event. It's temporary and it goes away, the same way all civilizations do, the same way everything dies, the same way all human beings die. They're just like have a temporary time in which they are able to to some extent enforce the rules of their reality. But like America, same thing with any country, they enforce the rules of their reality as long as they exist, and at some point the rules that they're policing and the policy that makes their borders a certain way, like because you can only exist as long as you police your policy so as to state your guidelines and dictations to yourself and the rest of the world, to set up the rules and boundaries for what your identity is, which the borders of your country goes along with that. It's only as long as you're able to police that, as long as like you basically exist as the civilization or exist as maintaining the reality. But it's just like it's temporary, and facts are the same. A fact is the exact same thing. It's just a temporary integrated reality that everybody believes in, the same way that everybody knew and believed Persia to be real when it did exist. Because it's a fact that Persia existed when it existed, but it's just in light of time it goes away. A fact is the exact same thing, and it's like, and what. In relation to aliens, I'm just talking about how we have to filter all of our we can't be open-minded about scientific things because science belongs with scientific authorities, and so your ability to speak on it only belongs to a handful of people out, even though like if we were more open-minded about science would be given to every single person, but it's starting to be distributed more to every person as we learn that intelligence is not necessarily with people who tell you that they're intelligent, that have deceived you into believing the construct that intelligence belongs with the intelligent people, because it's only as long as you believe in the construct that like intelligence, you have to do all this to be an authority. Like you do actually have to do all this, like get degrees and spend all this time and energy to be an authority in science, and that's totally true. It's just that we might graduate to a time where information is circulated so much to everybody that there's no point in even believing like these factual integrated, like these facts that it takes a lot of people to believe in them in order for them to stand, like the realities that you superimpose over the rest of reality, that you set up the guidelines for a temporary amount of time. Those realities are becoming more and more temporary as time goes on, to the point that it's hard to maintain realities at all, because time is being overturned at such a fast rate, and like change overall is happening more radically, so that it's more difficult to maintain reality over a long period of time, because things are, I don't know, things are I'm just speaking nonsense. This is just filler. I'm supposed to be talking about aliens. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to explain that a fact is like a reality that's maintained for a short period of time, but like the earth as a whole is the same thing, because its gravity allows it to be one of the possible place settings within the scheme of the entire universe, in which a narration or an entire story can carry out. The story of humans carries out specifically on the earth, and like those two things go hand in hand, as the identity that is the planet Earth as it orbits around, and the Earth as its location within the solar system gives it a specific location and time and identity, so that it has its specific characteristics. But basically, that we evolved from monkeys, I would say, is probably specific to the Earth, and based on the Earth's relationship, like location within the universe, gives it certain characteristics that make it conducive for a monkey race to survive out of it. Basically, is what you'd have to see or consider at the point that we are now in the future, where monkeys are the dominant race. It's kind of like the Earth had the right chemical composition in its atmosphere and right relationship to the star that it's orbiting, that it made it conducive for a monkey race to rise up and be dominant, because every single planet has a different chemical composition. And you have to believe me. You have to believe what I said. But basically, every planet has at least slightly different chemical composition. Like every planet has different characteristics, different relationship to the star that it's orbiting, so that it has different climate and different circumstances that give rise to different, like, gives advantages to different kinds of species to become dominant ultimately. And so you could believe in aliens or not, but it's interesting that in recent years, I'd say it's kind of like the Earth is trying to narrate its story to include aliens more, and that's what you see with the Area 51, that we're going to all storm it because that became a big enough cultural event that we actually believe that there's secrets there, because it's like Area 51 is, for a long time, we're like, oh, it's very mysterious, what is the government doing? But it's always kind of just a joke where we actually don't think that there's that much secretive or phenomenal or supernatural or transcendent out there that we're going to believe, like, that there's so much going on in the universe that our government is hiding it from us. Like, it was always kind of a joke, but at some point it became at some point we started to be more serious about narrating aliens into our life, to the point that, like, oh, we actually believe that the government is keeping things from us, or enough personal accounts came out that is actually the case, that we started to set up the event where we're going to storm Area 51. But it kind of speaks to the ability more so of regular people to narrate the story of the entire country, that it's like people are approaching the governmental body. At least in America, people are approaching the government more and more, like they're getting closer to it, to the point that they are actually trying to uncover what's mysterious or what's behind it, to the point that they are taking greater measures to define what is going on beyond government. And conspiracy theory is more and more developed. But your like, one of your predominant genres of art of the day is conspiracy theory, but that arises as a result of people that doesn't have, like, that's the direction that they go artistically, when what they have to uncover, they've uncovered everything else that is superficial enough, like stuff like Hollywood, and now there are more secrets to be found out. And artistically, we move as a people to try to uncover what we don't know, and we try to define what we don't know in government, because that's one of the last bastions of the undiscovered, really. It's like it's a last frontier. But at the point that you figured out, like, any secrets beyond government, we would just move to another last frontier or something. And eventually, in my opinion, the goal would be where we make it that we as a people entirely realize that our next last frontier, and like what we need to discover that we haven't discovered, we need to move to where we realize the rest of the universe to be what's undiscovered, and that we have it within ourselves. We have intelligence within ourselves as regular people to speak intelligently and scientifically enough. I mean, like, at the point that we're allowed to be open-minded about technology, like, rather than limit ourselves to be stupid people, like, it's the point at which we can really more and more exponentially collect and connect all of our interpretations. Like, if we're more open-minded as a society, we won't stigmatize science to only be with a few people. We'll allow it into our lives and relate ourselves to it. And at the point that you do that, then maybe we are that's only the point at which we'll have enough energy collectively across many different people to create inventions that, like, traverse time and space or whatever. Like, it's an optimistic thing to think that there's aliens if you are in the business of believing that you as an individual and, like, humans as a people group have the ability to make technology that allows us to go to all kinds of different places in the universe. Like, if you believe that people have the ability to choose their own path, is basically it. Because well, I don't know. I think it's optimistic to think that we have the ability to connect to all kinds of different places in the universe, and that like, it's more hopeful, enthusiastic, and optimistic to say that there's more than just the world that as you see it. And that there's more than just the world as you see it, and that we have much more to discover and learn, and we're only at the very beginning of what we've learned as a society, and that there's new things. That's what's optimistic, if you ask me, is you believe that there's new things, and you think that we have the chance to continue to learn new things, that things will continue to be new for us. Because if you get to the point that, oh, we did everything that we could possibly do, we've reached the pinnacle of human existence with the inventions that we have now, and the body of knowledge that we've arrived at now is the best possible body of knowledge that we could ever have, and there's no reason to know anything else. But like, that's pessimistic, but it's that same kind of pessimism that tells you that you're not intelligent enough to contribute to a body of knowledge as it already stands. But a more open-minded and optimistic view of things is to say that the body of knowledge as it stands is nothing, that we know nothing. Like, it's optimistic to say that we know nothing, because that tells you, that's the same thing as saying that we have so many more things to encompass and new worlds to see. And I believe that that's the case, more so than the Earth is all that we're ever going to arrive at. But there's plenty of people that have rational explanations for why we're never going to meet aliens, or why we're never going to leave the Earth. And they're rational because it's rational to think that, well, humans are too evil, that they will bomb each other nuclear. They will nuclear bomb each other too much, to the point that like mass extinction, like humans are only ever capable of mass extinction at the when they arrive at too advanced a civilization. They just are too evil that they're going to bomb each other and kill each other, or humans are too evil for an alien life form to ever visit us. I would agree more with that. Like, that's a more practical explanation. Like, maybe it's the case that we just haven't advanced enough that aliens want to interact with us. But I think it is something like we need to narrate our story to include aliens more. And so like Joe Rogan and Elon Musk, we kind of consider them to be more in line with alien culture. But there's this whole, like, that's another artistic development, kind of along with conspiracy theory, or just like art that covers the mysterious or totally undefinable, or like but like that's kind of always what art is covering. It's just like it's just that pop culture more centers around aliens through popular figures like Elon Musk or Joe Rogan, to the point that there's lots of people that want to associate and identify themselves with aliens. And like Travis Scott makes a song, "I'm the highest in the room," to say that he's the highest in the room, because he wants to be, because of course you want to be the highest in the room, but it's about being the highest in the room. And if you watch the GIF, like, rotating series of clips music video that plays on Spotify, if you listen to the song, it's different clips of aliens, because he's, through the song "Highest in the Room," trying to associate himself with alien culture, or say that he's high enough to that he basically talks to aliens or is one. But that's kind of a popular thing in our culture modern day, is to say, like, is kind of allude to, through your wearing of alien insignia, that you are an alien, that you're so transcendent, that you're like an alien that came to Earth, but that you're interested in what is beyond rather than what's on Earth. But we have and pop culture figures that are really popular, like Elon Musk, we basically call him an alien, and I'd say that's rather accurate, because he does things that are alien. Like, he does things way too far out of the realm of what a human is regularly supposed to do, and like a regular person wouldn't understand how he's even capable of any of these things. And he's basically we would call him an alien because he's doing things that nobody else does, like start an entire new car company when Ford and all those other ones, Chevy and Dodge, already own all the resources and power in the car industry, and have had all the power for 100 years, to the point that it would be difficult for anybody to create a competitive car company and then have it just rise to prominence all of a sudden. Like, nobody should be able to do that when the competition is already fixed to not include any lower level competitors. But besides that, he'll just have an idea, and he's somehow able to make it happen. That it just seems way too supernatural. Like, he figures out about rocket science enough that he's like, oh yeah, I'm just going to go to Mars, because he knows about rockets. Like, he's willing to risk that much of his own livelihood and his own life to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to send rockets to Mars and shit like that. Like he's willing to risk all of that, and then he risks it, and then is actually successful at it, because people just see regulation most of the time if they try to make a dream happen. But it's like making a dream happen for Elon Musk is apparently really easy. But we basically call that alien because it's alien to have that much success or be have so much ease. I mean, not that it's easy to do any of that. It takes so much hard work and sacrifice and risk. But it's basically alien because it's too far out of the realm of what regular people are able to do. And since he's sending people to Mars, it's like literally alien, because if you're behind colonizing a different planet, if you start a colony on a different planet where that colony is then on Mars, so everything that takes place on it is done in terms of Mars and Mars's atmosphere. Like you have a colony on a completely different planet that would generate its own orbital field and generates its own reality, to the point that if you make a colony on it, you do everything in terms of that planet and and that planet's atmosphere and characteristics and things like that. That is alien, because everything that we know is in terms of the Earth, and so nobody's ever that's immediately alien because it's outside of the Earth. It's into outer space, like the same way we would say a Martian is an alien, because he would become a Martian. Like he's basically saying, yeah, I'm gonna be a Martian. He's basically saying he is an alien, and like if he carries out what he wants to do, I don't know what else you would call it, but it's really more so that he breaks down the construct or the stigma of aliens by saying, oh yeah, I can be a Martian but also be a person. Like that he makes it so that you could be someone you can be an alien and a human being, but that's like, we break down the idea of aliens more and more the more we find it within ourselves to go further into the universe. But the first steps you have to take are, you have to see what's in your own backyard, and we haven't even done that. But we make aliens less unidentifiable the more we go into other planets, and that's the more that we understand ourselves to be aliens, because it's like it's kind of like people are aliens already, and we wouldn't understand ourselves to be aliens. Is part of the problem, or is part of the difficulty in narrating your story to include aliens. So I'm saying, like, aliens, you want to narrate your story to include aliens, and like maybe at the point that we as a people totally believe that they exist is the point that an alien life force might present itself to us. I know that there's probably plenty of people that think it works that way. Like at the point we totally believe it, that's when aliens are willing to present themselves and then actually be a part of our story. But maybe it's just the case that aliens is a construct. We have a like really closed-minded view of it, where we have all these stereotypes of what an alien is. Where we're like, oh yeah, it's little green men, they have spaceships, they have UFOs, they come down, they suck you up with light, and then they probe you, like these stereotypical things that are kind of closed-minded, the same way you would have stereotypes to describe cultures or different countries that you've never been in, and the way that culture works, the same way that America stigmatizes the entire continent of Africa to a series of images, like that were like because we don't know how actually Africa works, and you can take a trip there and depending on how long you stay there, you stay there longer, then you get more instantiated with the culture, so that you absorb more of the culture the more that you're there. It's just that so that you can become part of it. But if you've never been there, then most of America has never been there, so they just have a stereotypical set of images for what Africa is. They're like, oh, Africa's like a safari, and there's like these things, there's like tigers and shit like that, when we know nothing about the culture. It's like you could say that we do the same thing just for aliens, but like that's why we say people from different cultures are aliens, foreigners, to the point that we even call Mexicans illegal aliens, even though they're right next to us, they're right in our backyard, we call them aliens. So you can use aliens just to say that's everybody that isn't, because that's what it means, like everybody that isn't you. And so as a Earth, you do that for the entire universe. As America, we do that to the rest of the world, which it's like that's just the same thing, but a microcosm of Earth to universe, America to the rest of the world is a microcosm of Earth to universe, and like same thing as England to the rest of the world is Earth to universe. But like, yeah, America calls everybody who's, we call people who are foreigners aliens, but alien is like the most blanket term possible for other cultures or people you don't know, to the point that alien just is representative of the unknown or the indescribable. Since we say alien is a foreigner, but a foreigner from every single country, it's like the term for foreigner that transcends all the cultural boundaries of everything you don't know, of all cultures that exist that aren't you. You describe those people as aliens, but the Earth does that for the rest of the universe, so that we're just like the unidentifiable and the unknown is an alien, and we kind of filter it through that construct of things and through the stereotypes for aliens that we have, like other spaceships and little green men. But it's like we haven't done enough to actually exist or relate ourselves at all to any alien cultures. We've never come across any alien life, and so we only are able to stigmatize what an alien would be, and so we're left to our devices, and those devices are stereotypes, like limited images of them that we have from encounters that we've possibly had with aliens. Like, but that's why we say UFOs are unidentified flying objects, is because we can only describe aliens in terms of the unidentifiable. Even though you describe a UFO, that is a specific thing, you've identified it as a UFO, yet you're identifying the unidentifiable, like is exactly what you do with an alien. It's an identifying of the unidentifiable to call the unidentifiable one thing. So it is like really, it's as closed-minded as you can get, and like as stigmatizing as you can get. But it makes sense, because that's all that we can possibly do, since we actually don't know anything about any alien cultures, because we're totally separated from them. But it's just kind of like, it's interesting then that we only have that term to describe the indescribable. But there were points in human history where we didn't even where our concept of aliens was even more low resolution than it is now. But like, the more high resolution our concept of it is, the more we have actual images to tell ourselves a story about a possible alien culture, and especially if we went to another planet where there's this whole other alien civilization that's just a parallel universe doing things similar to how we're doing. At the point you do that, then you have such a high amount of series of images to go off of that are accurate about the way that aliens are, so that you've developed a really high resolution of like what a alien life force would be. It's just that I'm saying we're narrating our story more and more to make it more high resolution, more specific what we can say, and more intelligent what we can say about aliens. And we're trying to get to that point, and that's why we are writing aliens into our lives, and to like wear them on our shirts and things like that. And it's kind of like the stereotype: you take LSD, you talk to aliens. That's like, it's basically people describing that they're trying to talk to the transcendent, and you're just using aliens as a term to describe the transcendent, because ideas that you have in regular life they come from somewhere, and I would say they come from somewhere transcendent, because you wouldn't be able to explain where a new idea comes from, where an invention comes from. Like, it comes from you and your ability and your imagination to combine previously existing ideas into one. So it's like cumulative of other inventions and ideas that exist are new inventions, new ideas that you have and put out into the world. But that you would be able to put those things together, like, it's difficult to comprehend why your brain is able to do that, or like what has made your brain have that capability. And I would say that eventually you'd have to chalk it up to design of some kind that's like intelligent, that your brain does these intelligent things, and you can see yourself as more creative and then go in more creative directions. Like, if you identify yourself as more artistic, you'll go in that direction more. You'll want to maybe experiment with your imagination more, figure out more about the world and the universe, because that's just who you are already. And then you'll take more potent drugs and more psychedelic drugs just to figure out more. Like if you're more creative, you'll go in that direction, and so the window to ideas will be open more and more to you, the same way that when you take a psychedelic drug, it's like a window is open to you and you're just flooded with ideas to the point that you can't ignore or deny that there's like a greater purpose for you, or that you have a purpose, or that the transcendent is out there. So if you take LSD, then it's like you really can't ignore, if you're talking to aliens, that you're talking to something transcendent, especially if it's to the point that you're like asking it things and they reply to you. And then if you realize, like, if you understand that it's like that you can take LSD, talk to aliens, they actually answer things that you ask, then it's kind of like a religion, and one that in some ways is better than existing religions, because in existing religions you might talk to gods and then not and get hazy replies back, or at least be confused about what they're saying. But like you take LSD and talk to aliens, then they give you answers. I mean, I'm just saying that it's kind of like a set of religions that emerges through psychedelic drugs for the year 2020. I actually saw a guy on Joe Rogan that was talking about that specific thing, that it's like the religions that are developing now and into the future are more like generated through psychedelic drugs and the experiences that you have off of them, because they're kind of improvements on what existing religions are. But it's more so the case that you're with old religions and new religions and all religions, you're trying to describe the transcendent and your relationship to it. And a lot of times we use aliens, we call talking to God or talking to the transcendent aliens in modern day, more so that it's kind of like modern day God is something closer to aliens, because that's what we believe is out there in the ether, controlling and manipulating our lives, or like that's what is so much further ahead of us in terms of intelligence, is like alien life forms that can guide us in certain directions that we can talk to if we take psychedelic drugs. And like that's what we believe is way far out there and guiding our lives, like the same way that we'd see God does that. Is kind of like what people who take LSD are talking about similar things. Is like they think that there's aliens that could guide their life. I mean, if they're in the business of actually listening to them, you know. And so it's kind of like we're filtering our connection to the transcendence through the construct of aliens more so now than we used to, and more so in the direction of aliens than in the direction of gods and goddesses. We're like, oh, aliens, but that's you narrating your story to be a bit more practical in some senses, because you're considering just your place within the rest of the universe, because because what's really supernatural is just that we practically live within the context of this infinite, vast ocean that we know nothing about. So it's kind of like we're already in the presence of God, like physically in every way, by being in the middle of a universe that goes infinity in every direction. We know nothing about any of them. We are totally finite in the presence of something infinite. We're kind of already subject to God at the point you realize how subject the earth is to the rest of the universe. And nowadays we're kind of deeming aliens as to be a god, so we're like practically recognizing how transcendent things already are. Not that you want to give that much credit to aliens. Like I might sound like a big alien enthusiast, or something like that. But let me pause for a second. Yes. So people act like, so there's lots of different theories as to why aliens have never visited us, because the same ways that you describe that the universe is entirely infinite, those work against you when you're trying to describe why an alien has never visited us, because the universe is big enough that some alien would have visited us by now. And so it's difficult to explain why they haven't. Like there's got to be some reason for it, and so people come up with different reasons. One of them is that our planet, it'll be controlled by AI at some point. There's a theory that different planets develop so that they get to a point where they advance so much that like their AI takes over, and AI taking over takes all the creativity out of the equation. Like if AI took over Earth and usurped power from humans or obsoleted humans, then it would take all the creativity out of the equation. Humans wouldn't have any purpose anymore or reason to advance further in the universe, reason to connect themselves with other aliens. So some people believe that all planets across the universe kind of run into some wall or ceiling. I don't really believe in that. I think that that's too easy an explanation. I think it's the case that aliens already know where we are. They can already see us, and maybe we just need to narrate them into our story, or recognize the possibility of aliens, or make aliens more specific and intelligent to us so that we understand them in order for us to finally meet them. But I would say that they know where we are in the universe, and maybe it'll just reach a point where we finally meet them, or they have too much power. It's a possibility that aliens know where we are, and they've already like bought out the solar system, and they already know everything that happens on Earth, and like different alien political forces across the universe are already buying up large sections of like solar systems and galaxies that they want, like if other civilizations have already advanced, because it would make more sense that there were enough alien life forms that I don't know, but it's a possibility that it's just kind of like the universe is still developing the same way that when the Earth was developing, they hadn't mapped out every part of the Earth. And so you get the Europeans versus the Native Americans, and the Europeans had a faster rate of production of technology. They innovated technology at a faster rate at the time, and so used that power to cross the great expanse of the Atlantic Ocean to go to the Native Americans and kill all of them, rather than Native Americans going across Europe and killing all of them. But it's because the Europeans had a relatively greater rate of production, or greater rate of technological innovation, so that they were the society, civilization, culture to cross the expanse of the ocean to the Native Americans. But and I think that it works that way, honestly. I think that it's very relative like that. Everybody has a relative rate of production, and I think that that's the important determiner in who becomes a dominant planet, really, because I think it's kind of like a 1 and 2 case, the same way it worked with the Native Americans and the Europeans. And I know that happens within the same Earth, so that's a kind of different story. And also that the Native Americans used to be in the same place that the Europeans were, like when we first evolved in Africa or whatever. Like, it's not the same as, it doesn't prove that there are aliens. I'm just saying that this is like the way that it works, that you have different civilizations, like different worlds, planets as whole civilizations have different rates of production, and like that's dependent on your identity, the circumstances of your planet, or like how fast you as a people are able to come together, unify as a planet, or something. Maybe you need to unify as a planet before you go to any other planets. Like maybe that's a big inhibiting factor, or big hindrance, is just national sovereignty. Not that I'm against national sovereignty, but no, I mean, I would not be for any processes that take place that undo national sovereignty, but maybe it's the case that the world needs to unify as one people before we're like going into the rest of the universe, or something like that. But to become the dominant world in a competition of many different worlds, you would have to have the fastest rate of production. But like, I think every world has a different rate of production, and I'm saying just like rate of technology, so that they are able to travel to other planets faster, or travel to another planet before that planet travels to us. So I think it's kind of a 1 and 2 thing, where it's like, well, we're either going to go to them or they're going to go to us, and then if you go to them, you have a much greater advantage in terms of if you need to slaughter all of them and harness their resources or whatever. But it's like, different planets have different characteristics, where it's like the Earth might be too peaceful that they wouldn't just go and slaughter an entire different planet. But like, I would say that would be the case at this point, seeing as that we hate ourselves so much for our sins in the past of doing that kind of thing. We've kind of risen to a level where we're like, oh, we need to be kinder, and in the event we meet another alien life form or something, you know. But I think it's just we'll meet an alien or they'll meet us. Like, we both started with the beginning of the universe the same way, us and all other planets. So I think it's very relative, the same way time is, the same way other planets are all relative to each other in the universe, is that like everybody has a relative rate of production. And so you should consider it more relatively rather than that it's like this absolute of there's no aliens, or that there are aliens and they would have slaughtered us by now because their technology would be so much greater. I'd say that there are probably, if there are aliens, there are alien cultures that have gotten so big that they have harnessed the entire capability of their solar system, like to the point that they have transportation going from planet to planet, and they're just siphoning off the resources of their sun or something. I'm sure that there's alien civilizations that have grown to that extent, probably, as long as there are aliens. And so, like, relatively, there's alien civilizations that are relatively more intelligent than we are, but like generally speaking, I think maybe it's just our rate of production needs to reach a certain point so that we travel to the next closest alien planet before they travel to us. But I think it works like in Age of Empires, where you have your civilization and the rest of the map is not uncovered to you, so that you don't know what happens in the rest of the map, but you need to send people across the map to figure it out and figure out where the other civilizations are. And if your civilization has a faster rate of production and is able to create an army and like harvest grain, create an army and get resources faster than other civilizations, you have a faster rate of production overall, which is dependent on your identity, dependent on what is intelligent about the civilization or what's behind. Because if you're playing Age of Empires with a bunch of different people and you are the empire or civilization that eventually conquers all of them, it's because you were more intelligent to strategize the right way to produce everything at a fast enough rate that you met the other civilizations before they met you. Because if you defeat a nearby civilization, it's because your army, you produce at a much faster rate for them to overwhelm it with force and kill everybody. It's just like you're going to go to the civilizations before they get to you, or they're going to get to you first based on the rate of production. So I think that that's what's important to consider. It's like whether or not the Earth is able to be dominant in its local neighborhood within a galaxy of other planets, like, because there would be a hierarchy that would develop, I would imagine. I think that there'd still be a hierarchy between all the different planets in a galaxy, but then it goes further so that you consider the neighborhood within a super galaxy. But like there would probably be a dominance hierarchy, and then the Earth's place in that is dependent on their rate of production or their rate of intelligence or their ability to be undefinable according to other planets. But you're more undefinable if you create technologies that other planets can't define. But those technologies are the same ones that would bring you to their planet before they got to yours. And it's just like it just depends on your undefinability is what determines if you're at the top of the hierarchy, really. And so there's different kinds of intelligence. There's like intelligence, there's physical intelligence, and you can through if you're the most physically intelligent, then you're probably winning all the MMA fights, because it's kind of like sports is a game of intelligence, at least the ones that we play now, as much as it is like physical strength in a lot of aspects. Just because if you consider people playing soccer, they are all faking each other out in order to make a pass that's gonna be beneficial to them, pass to the right person. They have to fake people out in order to create a window for themselves to do that. And soccer, when you have the ball, it's just people faking out other people. Same with basketball. It's just like being undefinable in terms of where you're going to go with the ball. It's just like you faking people out or disguising your scheme or whatever. But like soccer, it happens. You can see that happen on the individual level, where it's just like you pretending to kick it somewhere, then kicking it somewhere else. But you have to do that until you get the ball in the goal. But it's like you faking people out. And so it's kind of like that's an important part interwoven with physical intelligence in the sports that we play. Currently in the existence of the Earth, and then we figure out that the Earth is very the Earth is technologically savvy, so, and doesn't even need a fucking calculator anymore. The Earth can do whatever it wants because of resources and capabilities, and that's what's important. I didn't mean to start talking about nonsense all of a sudden. It's only in the last minute, really. And but So there are aliens and there are alien life forms out there, but so that's the way that I'd say it works, is like it's dependent on a rate of production. And I'd say like probably to some extent aliens already know where we are, though. Like maybe it's not so simple as that we would, because it's difficult to believe that we would actually arrive at aliens before they arrived at us. It would be probably the case that aliens would run into us, and there's probably some that have scouted us out and know where we are. So maybe it's the case that they're waiting for us to develop more. Or if you believe in very advanced conspiracy theories, you believe that aliens bred with humans thousands of years ago, and that all major religions, this is a talking point in conspiracy theories, is that all major religions have a reptile myth of some kind that developed at the onset of the religion. So with Christianity, it's like you look at Adam and Eve, and the serpent the serpent myth is connected with other ancient Mesopotamian religions and other major religions, like that they had some reptile myth in which humans significantly interacted with a reptile, and like that was profound enough that it's the most archetypal or ancient myth of many major religions, is the interaction of humans and aliens. And some conspiracy theorists take this to mean that the religions are trying to communicate a time when aliens interbred with humans, and that's explains why everybody has a reptilian brain, as you would call it. And also, then they would say that our higher up leaders are like too far reptile, but they kind of say that reptiles are not like humans and don't have creativity and are envious of humans' creativity, and so end up in high positions of power within the world to deceive humans and the rest of the people in the world, so that they can dumb down their creativity or limit their creativity and regulate their creativity. Like people in conspiracy theory would say that it's like, high-ended, kind of ridiculous conspiracy theory would maintain that there's some amount of reptile, like people that get in high positions of power are kind of like part reptile, basically, where they're able to regulate the rest of the world's creativity, and also that they're doing that to harness the creativity of humans. I was listening to one guy who was like, oh, the rings of Saturn. There was one guy I was listening to that said that Saturn used to be the sun, and that the moon receives signals from Saturn's rings, and that the moon is a giant machine put in place by an alien life form not forever ago, like in relatively recent history. Like the moon was created and put in place as this giant machine that receives signals from Saturn's rings and then transmutes those signals onto the Earth to provide us to give to us the reality that we see and that we think we know. But it has to do with us as humans not understanding the depth, not understanding frequency at a deep enough level to see past what frequencies are visible, which is like we see the entire world through visible light, which is actually a very small bandwidth of frequency in terms of the potential of all different frequencies that we could understand. Like the visible light bandwidth of frequency, the one that we see all the world in, is what aliens are using to trick us into thinking that that's what reality is, when it's like if we had a greater understanding of frequency, we would have this much deeper knowledge of things, or we would be able to transcendently understand our place in the universe or something. But there's so that's one set of conspiracy theories that they include reptiles to say that that aliens already know where we are. I wouldn't really want to be in the business of believing any of that, because it's kind of in the business of saying that we don't have control over our circumstances. And so that makes the whole thing not fun. If you take our potential for meeting alien life out of the equation, I mean, it just makes it a whole lot less fun when there's not our own ability to narrate our own lives. Like, it's not under our control. that's not really fun, and that's another way you can stigmatize the unknown, is you can make it that the unknown is completely evil, and like that's not what you want to do, because that hinders your ability to approach what you don't know. And so that's just like that's not a narration that I want to take part in. But the that set of conspiracy theories kind of believes that it's kind of like plausible, only to the extent that if you consider that aliens are already buying and selling large sections of the universe, like there's aliens that have interest in the solar system, that they already bought it, and and because there's so much higher in intelligence, they bought the solar system and then put these mechanisms in place to siphon off human energy as data or something. I mean, if they were aliens were advanced enough, I guess that's a possibility. It's just like there are infinite possible potential narrations once you consider the capacity of the universe. So it's like you could kind of make anything plausible at some point like that. You're like, oh, well, I guess if aliens were like bought out the solar system, that they're already interested in what humans are doing or whatever, to an extent like it's too intelligent that we would even understand that, like, you know. But I would prefer to imagine that aliens aren't already controlling us. It's just like that's a means to an end. That's pretty limiting to view it as that we're already totally controlled. I mean, that's just like saying your life is already programmed and you're already going to do everything that you were going to do and that you don't have free will. It's a similar thing to say that. And whenever you get too far into extremes, whether they be liberal or conservative media or narrations, they tend to make it that you don't have as control over your life, because conservative extremes will tell you that like the media has too much power. I mean, it'll just make you unhappy about how much control you don't have over your life. And so we need to defeat negative narrations like that and optimistically move forward to try to make the most of our surroundings so that we use our talents and abilities to further civilization, you know? And what's interesting is conspiracy theory itself. It's interesting that some guy or a few people can believe in all those things I just said and like put it forward as if it's fact, like that's how much they believe it. And it kind of makes it just more interesting when somebody puts forward a wild conspiracy theory. Like that's a lot more entertaining than boring things like saying that there's nothing supernatural. And so there's something to be said about trying to be entertaining. It's just like if the world allows it to be that anybody's interpretation of events is on the table and anybody's imagination can contribute to our collective imagination, like if the world becomes open-minded enough that people are able to just say that they have characteristics, like say that they're intelligent rather than having to prove it through some authoritative means like we normally have to today, it makes for a more interesting world where if everybody's able to present what they think is true and everybody's accepting of that. It's just that at this time we live in a world that isn't accepting very much of that, and like we live in a world that seeks to regulate extremes in creativity and outliers in human behavior. Like there's a lot of systems in place in order to regulate that, and which is unfortunate. But like if we lived in an open-minded world, it would be a more interesting place if everybody was able to, if people were accepted for the truths that they put forward and we were just more understanding of each other overall. But like there's a lot of authoritative structures that regulate your ability to speak in a lot of ways and that kind of thing. But watch out for this vaccine. I don't trust the vaccine still. It's worrisome, and there's already a lot of adverse side. It's whatever you make of it. If you're somebody who believes in the healing power of the vaccine, you're already going to get the vaccine, and I don't want to detract you from that. Like ultimately, I guess I wouldn't want to plant a lot of doubt in your head so that you feel uncomfortable about the vaccine if you're somebody who believes in it. So if you believe in it, just keep going strong with that. But I'm not really on the side of it, and I'm more worried about this, like you have to take a second dose of it if you take the first one, and in trials the second dose was worse because you get more of the vaccine with the second dose. and they might just rope you in and tell you that you have to take it every 3 months at the point that you're already taking it in order to stay healthy. So I wouldn't want to commit to this thing myself, and that's just whatever. That's just for free that I added that on. But make sure that you allow yourself to believe that the supernatural and the transcendent is out there, and make time for that in your life. And bye now.